The new Eskom board chairperson, Mteto Nyati, is hitting the ground running. The briefing yesterday with members of the media talking for the first time since taking over the reins, Nyati said his priority is to stabilize leadership at the struggling utility. Eskom remains without a CEO 8 months since the departure of Andre de Ruyter. Well, Nyati joins me in studio now to tell us about his plans to turn around the financial situation, leadership and indeed operations at the utility. Mr. Nyati, thank you very much for your time. I want to quickly begin with this question about your team suggesting that it expects the financial situation at Eskom to start bearing fruit, or at least start showing signs of improvement by 2025. What will have changed by then, very briefly?
You know, Oli, there are a number of things that are creating the situation that we are in right now. The big part of that is the performance of our generation fleet, which is largely almost 90% of that is coal fleet, right? The performance of that fleet has been unreliable for a long time. So what we have been doing, together, of course, with management, they presented management a recovery plan for generation, and we approved as the board that plan in March. And it's a 24-month plan to get the generation fleet to be stable, reliable, so that it can be able to produce for the country the megawatts the country needs.
Yeah.
That is what would have changed, because where we are right now, when you start to see I call it's like a light at the end of the tunnel, yeah, where we had almost just over a week without load shedding, that's not a miracle. It's because of the execution of that plan. We have a 24-month plan, and people have been working on that plan, and in many cases, yeah, in fact, the leadership of generation is ahead of that plan.
Well, let me step in quickly, because you're talking much the same language as the Minister of Electricity and more recently the President, all of you seeking to paint a picture of significant improvement in load shedding. But I'm going to argue different, and it's simply on this, that if Eskom's ability to provide electricity or meet demand is still affected by a mere change of weather patterns, I put it to you, we are nowhere near where we need to be. Can that be characterized as significant improvement?
You need to understand the nature of the problem. You know, in order for anybody to solve the problem, the first thing is you need to understand what is the nature of the problem.
Yeah.
I will make it a simple thing. Assuming that you have 100 taxes, and those taxes, of course, you are using them to generate business, and you have not been maintaining them. You have not been taking them for service for the longest period of time. And those taxis, one by one, will be breaking, as we are transporting your passengers. So what we have been doing as part of the generation turnaround plan is to take each and every one of those taxis for a service, get it back to standard, and then bringing it back into the fleet. Yeah. So what you are starting to have, you're starting to have a base that is stable as you begin to make sure that you have done your maintenance on those taxis. So what you are seeing now is a result of having a stable base at the back of the maintenance that is being done by the team. Yeah. And yes, weather has got a lot of implications. During, in summertime and wintertime, demand changes, and if you've got a base that is not yet as stable as it should be, it will affect that, but it does not mean you are not making progress.
Let's talk about the financial situation. Incidentally, today, the Minister of Finance is tabling his midterm budget in Parliament. And in February, he injected some 254 billion to try and help you with the debt situation. But the question I want to ask of you is, has anything changed for Eskom given the results you tabled yesterday and where you are in terms of that debt? Because if we look at it, that 254 billion, it went in and tried to decrease the debt to what, 396 billion in 2022. But now it's back again to 423 billion.
Yeah, I think this is again it's really a lack of understanding of what is happening.
Okay.
You know, what is happening is that the cabinet, they approved that the fiscals need to help Eskom to the tune of 254. It does not mean that they have already given Eskom that amount of money.
Right.
Over a period of 3 years, they will be giving some money to Eskom. You know, so that is what is going on. You know, right now I think we've just received just over it's about 60 billion we've just received recently, right? You know, but it's just you know, every couple of months or is going to be another amount that we get. So that 254 is not something that we received. You know. Okay. Yeah.
All right, and I'm glad that this conversation is a bit pacey because of time constraints. So I want to launch immediately into the leadership issues in Eskom. The appointment of a permanent CEO, and I want to link that deliberately with the implementation of any turnaround plan at that institution. Do you believe that these two go together?
Yes, they go together. You know, as somebody that has been a CEO for many, many years myself, I believe that any turnaround plan needs to be led by the leader of the organization. And that leader is not the chairman, it's not anybody else, it is the CEO of the company. You know, that is the person that should be leading. But we cannot be, just because the person is not around, not start to do things that will help so that when he or she ends up joining the company, he can then review and then make some changes. But right now, we've got smart people in Eskom. And these are people that this new person will continue to still be relying on to execute, because they're not going to be the ones who are going to be doing it.
Yes.
So these good people, they continue to do work whilst we are finalizing the appointment of the new CEO.
And so where is that process of finalizing the appointment of the CEO?
So last week, as the board, we signed off 3 names of appointable individuals, and we handed over those names to our minister, Minister Pravin Ghordan. So the process of government now has kicked in. The government will have to do what it needs to do and let us know who amongst those 3 will be the CEO of the company. But from where the board is sitting, any of those 3, they are competent, will be able to take this company forward.
Are any of them anywhere near the age of 60, which is a retirement age for any government institution?
For where I'm sitting right now, I'm not going to be giving out that information. You know, you are going to see when we announce. That level of detail is not something that I would like to be sharing at this time.
Let's go back to the process, the ill-fated process, the very first process of trying to appoint a CEO. At that time, it is public knowledge that the board submitted one name of a person whom the board deemed appointable. Was the board in unison about this decision of submitting one name?
Yes, the board looked at all of the matters in front of itself, the challenges that we have as a country, the challenges of trying to attract the right people for the job, and the urgency of the matter. And we all came to the conclusion that given the challenges at the time, we need to just submit 3 names, but only one of those names was appointable.
Why was this process rejected by the minister, though?
It's because when you look at some of these matters, you are living in a country, most especially when it comes to Eskom, you have to do things by the book. As much as, yes, as agency, but you need to do things by the book. The next thing is that one has to be asked now, okay, according to the memorandum of incorporation, you are supposed to minister to look at 3, but you only had 1.
Yeah.
And which means basically you did not have the opportunity to make a choice. So you actually worked against your memorandum of incorporation. So basically, the minister felt that he needs to do things in line with the memorandum of incorporation of Eskom, which is understandable from where he's sitting.
Let's talk about that relationship with the Minister of Public Enterprises and the board. In your view, based on the months that you have spent at that institution, how important is this relationship for the proper functioning of the utility? Is it something that you place a premium on?
So for me, this is not just unique for an SOE. In my environment as the CEO of many of the different companies that I work for, management of stakeholders is absolutely critical. And one of those stakeholders could be investors, it could be shareholders. In this case, the Minister of Public Enterprise is the representative of the shareholder. It is absolutely critical that the board and the company must have a good working relationship with the minister. It is key.
Interference? How do you deal with that? And would you say there has been political interference?
I've sat on that board now for a year. I read and I hear all of what people are saying, and I sometimes wonder what is it that they see, because we are there, and where we're sitting, we don't see this interference. So I've not seen it personally, the interference.
Your predecessor, why did he leave then?
Mpo decided to resign. He felt that he has done what he needed to do, and he wanted to go and do other things. And for us as the board, this was really a blow to have a leader like Mpo leaving so early in terms of our tenure. So yeah, it was not a good thing to see. But for me, I felt that it's very, very important that we continue the good work that he was doing together with the board. The country cannot afford for us not to, the gains that we have managed to achieve, to lose those gains. It is something that we could not afford to do.
Yeah. I want to quickly deal with this one element, and that is that, so 3 names are now sitting with the Minister of Public Enterprises for consideration to occupy the position of CEO. If those names are ultimately rejected, could we see you acting in that position of CEO whilst at the same time being chairperson of the board? And I ask this because it is nothing strange at that institution. Jabu Mabuza, the late Jabu Mabuza, he held these 2 positions at the same time. Is that something that you think you may possibly...
Look, I'm a businessman, first and foremost, and I look at probability of things. And what is the probability of the board have applied itself around things and came up with a list of 3 names? All of them are appointable names. That is in line with the memorandum of incorporation of the company. Who would reject that? And what would be the basis of that person rejecting those names? It's just highly improbable.
But
that
it did
situation.
Happen. But
I don't know. I mean, where has it ever happened?
Mr. Nyati, it happened.
Where?
At Eskom.
Where? Having 3 appointable names, and nobody rejected the names, by the way. Nobody. That's another fact. It's not factually correct.
Right. Let me put it to you this way.
It's not factually correct to say that.
Let me put it to you this way. Are you able, are you willing to level with the public and tell us what the minister's reservations were about that one appointable candidate and why that person was rejected?
The minister did not reject the person. You know, you keep going back to rejecting. The minister did not reject. The minister wanted the board to give him 3 appointable persons in line with the memorandum of incorporation of the company. And this is what the board has done.
Is it possible?
And there is no basis now. Now that we've got 3 names, it's highly improbable that anybody would say, oh, okay, I don't want these 3 names. Based on what?
Let me ask you this question then. That person, that one candidate that was submitted, if they were not rejected, is it possible that they are still part of this 3 that is now appointed?
Of course.
So that person is part of this top 3?
Of course. This is what I mean. This is why I'm saying it's a misunderstanding, all of what has been being said. Huge misunderstanding, reading of the situation in such a wrong way.
Interesting. Interesting. Let me take you to a different subject altogether. The Democratic Alliance has raised an issue about an advert by Eskom, and it has to do with a new corporate identity. Why does Eskom need a new corporate identity?
Again, you know, all of these things, but it's so good. That's why we need to have this discussion, so that people can have a much better understanding of things. Eskom, in 2019, as part and parcel of its transformation in the restructuring of Eskom, to prepare it for the new world, it was decided that you need to restructure it and create 3 entities. Those entities being independent entities that have got their own identity. It's generation, it's transmission, and distribution. And where we are now, each and every one of those have got new names. They have been, they are legal, separate legal entities that will have their own boards, that will have their own identities. Their identity is not going to be generation. Their identity is not going to be transmission. It's going to be, for example, the transmission company is going to be NTCSA, the National Transmission Company of South Africa.
Right.
That has to have a new logo. That has to have a new way of showing up to the market. Otherwise, you know, how do you say, yes, I'm presenting this, what is this? Okay. It's got no logo, it's got nothing. So to prepare for all of that piece of work, you need to have something that is being done. And that is the reason why, when it comes to Eskom, Eskom is not changing its logo at all.
Right.
Yeah.
The argument is going to be that the money could possibly be better spent elsewhere, given the financial challenges of this institution. How much are you looking to spend at this?
Look, I don't necessarily go to that level of detail. You know, for me, I look at things strategically. Strategically, this country needs to have these separate entities. We need to have an independent national transmission company of South Africa that will enable the independent power producer to be able to sell electricity into Eskom to ultimately get rid of this load shedding, because now we'll be having alternative source of energy coming from independent power producers, not relying 100% on Eskom. That can only be a good thing. So strategically, where I'm sitting, this is a good move by the country. Yeah. This is a good, we need to support this development.
You come from the private sector,
yes.
Mr. Nyati. There is often a reluctance by people who come from private institutions to go into government, because you come out of an institution and you're no longer attractive. Do you find that there is a difference in culture between the private sector and going into a state-owned entity or state-owned company? Did you find a culture shock?
For me, it was not a culture shock. It's something that I had assumptions about the public sector, and many of those assumptions were proved to be accurate. For example, just the sense of urgency around things. And we find that things take a little longer in terms of decision making. And it's things like that reluctance in moving to consequence management, that's the stuff that has to be embedded in terms of how we do things within Eskom, So me taking this role is also part and parcel of saying we need to start to change how we do things in our SOEs, to start to act more like the private sector, hold people accountable. When you say you are going to do something, you will need to be able to do what you commit to do. If you do not do that, there needs to be consequences around that. So that is the culture that the board, together with the new CEO, we will be driving within Eskom.
And that requires, though, a certain level of independence of that board to say, no matter the pressure that may come from the political head, you still are going to stay on course with what you believe as the board is the direction the institution should take. Can you guarantee that this board is independent in the execution of its work?
This board, we have got fiduciary duties as the board, and our duties are to Eskom. We need to do always what's right for Eskom. And our commitment to South Africa is that we'll continue to do that. That's what is important. As long as our interests are aligned to serving Eskom and to serving the people of South Africa, we are going to be cool. If there is misalignment and not lack of understanding around that, then there are going to be challenges. Yeah. But up to this point, I have not seen those challenges. I've seen actually a huge amount of support with regards to some of the key decisions. For example, look at this turnaround plan. This turnaround plan that was presented to us and was approved in March, many people in the political space, they wanted a 3-month plan. And we said, no, it's not possible. You need 2 years to be able to do this. You need time. You need to commit resources. You need to do things in a particular way to make sure that it meets certain standards. That is how you need to push back. And that is what this board has done and will continue to do for the interest of Eskom.
Before we go, you said yesterday that you're here to stay. You're not going to resign anytime soon. And importantly, talking to the interests of ordinary South Africans. How do you make this institution regain the trust of ordinary South Africans?
Look, the first thing is we need to get ourselves a new CEO. To me, the CEO is someone that is going to set the tone and get this company to be on the right path, create the kind of culture. But the only thing that is going to make South Africans to believe in us again is for them to have a different experience of Eskom, meaning they must have less or no load shedding. And that's why the work that we're currently doing around the generation recovery plan, it is so critical.
Are you willing to put a timeline on that?
We've given it 24 months. Okay. That was from March last year, or from March this year. That's the 24 months.
Mteto Nyati, let me thank you very much for your time. Newly minted Eskom Board Chairperson. All right. Well, make of it what you will.